The Versailles Peace Conference, also called the Paris Peace Conference, was a series of meetings of over 20 nations that resulted in many treaties between countries. One important treaty was the Treaty of Versailles, signed by Germany and the Allied powers after World War I, designed to establish the terms of peace between nations, restore European stability, and maintain an everlasting global peace.
The conferences took place on January 18, 1919, in the Palace of Versailles outside of Paris, France. Attending the meetings were representatives from all nations except Russia, who exited the war early, and Germany. The most prominent guests were the Big Four: Woodrow Wilson, the President of the United States; Georges Clemenceau, the French Prime Minister; David Lloyd George, the British Prime Minister; and Vittorio Orlando, the Italian Prime Minister.
In preparation for the conference, President Woodrow Wilson prepared the 14 points, which were proposals that outlined a plan for achieving global peace. The first 4 points included ending secret treaties, freedom of the seas, free trade, and reduced national armies and navies. The 5th point was meant to adjust the colonial claims so there would be fairness between the colonial people. The 6th through 13th point were all specific suggestions for new borders and the creation of new nations.
The goal of Britain during the conference was to ensure the security of France, punish Germany, and to settle territorial disputes in favor for the British Empire. The British wanted to obtain security from Germany, but at the same time didn't want to provoke Germany by shrinking their borders. Britain did, however, want Germany to pay for the war reparations.
Italy's goal focused mainly on gaining all the possible land they could. They wanted to negotiate the addition of all the lands offered to them in the Treaty of London to Italy. The state of Fiume was their primary goal because it was the principal seaport on the Adriatic Sea.
The goal of France during the conference was to ensure Germany would never attack France. They wanted to weaken Germany strategically, militarily, and economically, as well as acquire American and British guarantee of France's security. France wanted to punish Germany so severely that they would never want to start another war. Clemenceau, the French statesman and the representative of France for the conference, advocated for the Ruhr district of Rhine to be placed under international control so it can be used as a buffer region between France and Germany.
The Paris Peace Conference became home to debate between the British, French, and U.S. leaders, as well as the leaders of all the nations attending the meeting. After all the heated arguments subsided, a compromise was made: the Treaty of Versailles.
Versailles was signed by the Allied powers in Germany on June 28, 1919, which was 5 years and a day after the assassination of Franz Ferdinand. The treaty made use of Woodrow Wilson's 14th point, which brought about the League of Nations. The League of Nations was an international association whose goal would be to keep peace among the nations.
The Versailles Treaty was only one of 5 treaties. The other treaties led to land losses for the Central Powers and the disintegration of the Ottoman Empire. The Austro-Hungarian Empire was split into Austria, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia. The Ottoman Empire was stripped of almost all of its land and was only left with what is now Turkey. Palestine, Iraq, and Transjordan came under British rule, and Syria and Lebanon went to France.
Russia, who left the war early because of civil unrest, was stripped of lands as well. Romania and Poland gained some Russian territory, and Finland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania became independent nations.
Germany was basically screwed over by the peace settlements made by the Versailles Conference. Germany was forced to surrender all overseas colonies in Africa and the Pacific. Their army was restricted in size. Germany was prohibited from importing or manufacturing weapons or war material, and Germany was forbidden to build or buy submarines or have an air force. On top of everything else that happened, Germany was faced with the war guilt clause. Germans were forced to take all the blame for the war and were forced to pay all the debts for the war, which totaled up to $33 billion.
Everyone got nothing they wanted. Mandated territories were angry at the Allied powers for disregarding their desire for independence. Italy and Japan were embittered because they faced significant losses and got no land from the war as intended, and lacking for support from the US and later other nations, the League of Nations died down.
What was meant to be a plan for lasting peace led to bitter feelings of betrayal, hatred, loss of land, and the creation of new independent nations. The demands made between different nations led to large disagreements. The hard feelings left by the Treaty of Versailles fueled German resentment and led to the start of World War II.